So we can learn a lot about simple animations from these early collage animations of Monty Python and a whole loads of other different examples. But basically the idea here is that we want a set of foreground elements, a set of background elements, and then a subject that moves through the scene. And it's really simple to kind of stick all this together. So I just wanted to go over how you might do that in After Effects. And I've already done the sort of the legwork of going through and finding a whole bunch of different elements and cutting them out and getting them ready for this. So let's jump right in. The first step we're going to do is do layer, new, solid. And it really doesn't matter what color it is because we're actually going to add a gradient to it. So you can go up to help and just type in gradient. And if I choose gradient ramp, it'll give me two separate choices. And I'm going to make the first one sort of this pinkish color as a sort of homage to the Killer Cars animation. The other one I will make this sort of a moderate gray, and this is just going to create a little bit more texture across the background of the image. And then the final step in After Effects, if you're using a gradient, what it does is it gives you two separate anchor points, and then it radiates the gradient from that point outwards. So I'm just taking each one of these and moving the X position all the way, halfway to the left, and the Y position halfway to the right. And that way it gives us a diagonal gradient across the entire thing. And as we side scroll through this scene, that'll be our backdrop. And it'll just create a slightly nicer backdrop than just straight black or white or even just a random color. So I'm going to double up the size of it, and that way we can slave all our elements to this image and then scroll it back and forth, and it's going to move our scene around the Godzilla that we'll be using. And then I'm just going to start dropping the different elements into this scene. And so I know I want this long scroll of houses to be my background for the moment. So I'm going to make it span about half the width of my gradient, and then from there I'm going to grab it and duplicate it with Command D. And that is not Command D. There we go. Command D. And drag that over and set it side by side like that. It's okay that it hangs off the edge. That's perfectly fine because we don't need all of it to be in the scene. And then I'll start dropping in foreground elements. And I'm doing this a little bit blindly because I'm just going to sort of touch these up as I go once I have everything or most of the stuff in the scene. So there's one foreground element that's just going to sit right in front of those. And then I'm going to have this guy all the way over here on my right. And the little bit funny thing about this one is that it's a very long perspective shot of this, but I really want this portion right here to be on the right side of my screen. So if I go up here and I do horizontal or flip, then you can do transform and flip horizontal. And now I have it on the left-hand side, which is perfect for me. And so I'll set that down about there. And then there's one other building here that I want, which is this guy. And I'll kind of scale that back and set it up to be the foreground element for this side of the shot. That might be a little bit large now that I'm looking at it, but we'll get to that in a moment. So the final thing that we want to do in order to make this a side-scrolling set of assets is just highlight all of them and grab a whip from any one of them and just drag it over top of the royal blue, and you'll see all the parent and link have reset into this location. Now I can go into my transform functions, grab my X position on the axis and drag it back and forth, and I have a full side scrolling scene. And now is the best time to go through and sort of do any of those fine-tuned options of making it bigger or smaller, moving it back and forth, and just sort of getting it just about right to where we want it to be. And so I'll drag that over, and there's the final edge of the scene. So I want to grab this guy who is looking a little bit small to me. That would be this layer here. I'll just grab and drag it up. If you hold shift before you click on the element, oftentimes it'll just click off of the element, so just be careful of that. And so this is the point at which I'd recommend to go through and just drop any extra cars or anything like that that you might want in this scene. Anything that you add in is just going to be like extra visual interest to the scene, and it's just going to become a more interesting animation. So it really does help to have a lot of different choices. I am not going to do all of them just because it'll extend the length of this tutorial. And what you really need to see next, now that I have these cars in here and I have them slaved to my my background solid, is to bring my character in. And so you want your character to fall behind all your foreground elements and in front of all your background elements, which I think is right here for me. So if I grab him and I drag him behind, then he's in the perfect spot. He's a little bit large and he's facing in the wrong direction, so I'm going to flip him horizontally again, and then I'm just going to scale him back. And that looks about right. We want his head to kind of peek up over top of here. And now you're basically ready to start animating if your scene is done. And what we're going to do first is just grab this and drag it back and forth, but that'll be in our next steps video. All right.